Hello and welcome to Pressure Point. I'm Valerie Dudoward. Our topic this program, Women and War. Rape, personal horror, political weapon. Hundreds of thousands of signatures have been gathered to support systematic rape being reclassified as a war crime under the Geneva Convention. This is going to be a really high-profile issue at the annual session of the United Nations Human Rights Commission, which is going to be held in Geneva this month. Meetings and rallies have been held in Vancouver and in cities across Canada on this issue already. This evening, to discuss the program, we have Yvonne Brown of the Congress of Black Women, Pamela Dudoward of the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Centre Society, and Milu Gelbort of the BC Society of Spanish-Speaking Women. Welcome to the program. I'm looking forward to having a really interesting exchange this evening. The first thing that I would like to ask Milu is that sometimes it's very difficult for people, women, the public at large, to connect with an issue that seems as devastating and in some ways as far away in the world as what we're hearing about in Bosnia and Guatemala and all parts of the world. How can we as individuals connect to this?
Well, it's not an easy question, but I know that we are living in times where technology can do miracles. We can be sitting in our dining room and drinking a glass of wine and watch how the Christmas tree is shining on top of Iraq, killing thousands of people. So we can be being spectators and be happy and be content, and that we are watching the news, listening to all these horrors. For me, the only way to connect, the only way that feel that I'm part of that is like thinking that I am a woman. And even though they are far away or they speak different language, they are different kind of culture, we share the same thing. We share the same oppression because we are women. So for, like I said before, if I don't want to be a spectator, I have to feel it from my heart. What happened with that woman over there is happening with me here. And it's happening with all of us all the time. I don't know if I was clear what I answered or not.
Yes, yes, I think
because
that's clear.
It's very hard to be a spectator, because I think if I don't do anything, I adding to this spectator thing in this society, which is really terrible.
As a woman, what does rape mean?
Okay, rape means terror, means lack of power, means shame, means a lot of pain. And I think that the only ones who can really answer what rape is we women. Because since we are really, really young, we have this ghost behind us. When we walk in a dark street, when we are alone, we always look around and see what's going on. So rape is the highest weapon that people use in violence against women.
Yvonne, looking at rape as an issue and a reality in a historical perspective, can you discuss the roots of that?
Well, I think rape has always been a part of the whole system of domination, whether it was conquest or what happens in one's private life between one's spouse. It's always been a weapon of domination. And in terms of historical perspective, I think it was part and parcel of all colonial activities. And to speak personally, I don't know if in the retelling of the history of the North Atlantic slave trade, if people know that rape was a systematic part of that experience. I was amazed this summer to have gone to Ghana and to visit the dungeons where African peoples were held for upwards of 3 months until they were hoarded onto the slave ships. That there was a courtyard built in the women's dungeons with a trapdoor leading from the courtyard up to the officers' dwellings, which was adjacent to the chapel. And when the ships came in, it was systematic that the officers would round up the women in this courtyard, choose whom they would assault sexually, had them come up the trapdoor, and they were gang raped and assaulted. Some of them had their legs ripped apart in most disgraceful ways. And after the orgy, those who refused were put outside and tied with 2 ball and chains to their legs, and they were allowed to stay in the sun and starve to death. And the officers could just walk next door where the chapel was housed, and there was a priest waiting to absolve them of their sins. And it didn't stop there. It came right across the Atlantic trade in the Middle Passage, that horrible sardine packing of human beings. And it continued in the New World. Other people come to the New World for a new beginning. We came for enslavement. And so I can connect with you as a woman when you talk about how can you connect with, Milu, how you were saying, how can you connect as a woman? As a black woman, I can connect with the horror of slavery, of rape, because rape was part of the whole enslavement process, where the white men who were owners and stuff would come and help themselves, even in the presence of their husbands. And their husbands were powerless to do anything about it because they had the power. And many times when the men protested, they would turn around and shoot the men, the women, and the children. So, I can certainly connect with the women in Bosnia and the implications of that, because they're now bearing children which are the fruits of horror and destruction. I can identify with the rape that occurred with the Aboriginal peoples all over the world. It was a part of that whole colonial process, and it was one of those hidden crimes. There's a whole sort of social phenomenon, or people who are products of this phenomenon of rape.
Picking up on that theme just for a moment, Pamela, as a First Nations person, I have really been hearing a lot in the Native community, in the Aboriginal community, about the healing process that Native people are going through. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I believe that the healing process, is definitely occurring not only for the Aboriginal people of BC, but Native peoples all across Canada. For example, just over a decade ago, the people of Alkali Lake addressed issues of alcoholism as an entire community that was at least 96% alcohol related. All of them were alcoholics, and they turned that around to almost 100% sobriety. But in that process, they found that there were issues at the core that had to do with sexual abuse within the residential school system, and also by some of the priests who ran the communities and the school as well. And in Vancouver right now, we have Helping Spirit Lodge, which is the first Native women's battered shelter. And there is a lot of progress that is happening for us to regain the empowerment that we lost through a lot of these systems.
I think in society, sometimes we really focus so much on what is negative and always dealing with fighting the oppression and fighting the oppressors. What positive things are happening as a board member that you can talk about in Vancouver, right in Vancouver, for First Nations people?
As a board member of the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Centre Society, there are many programs occurring within that centre because it is a focal point not only for Native people coming off reserve into the Native community and non-Native community of Vancouver, but for urban Native Indian people as well. There are many training programs going on, pre-employment training programs for youth for all ages, a teen support program, a daycare. There are support groups at night that meet that address substance abuse, alcoholism, adult children of alcoholism, sexual abuse issues, all of those that are related.
I think that's probably related to some of the ties that bind us. What is it, for example, Milu, that you can speak of that helps you to relate to what Yvonne talks about and what Pamela talks about? What is it about this whole issue of women and powerlessness?
Like you were saying and you were saying, now the way that I can connect with you is like I said before, I am a woman, and we live in a really violent society. And rape is used like to take, like I said before, our power away. And for me, I mean, it's not an easy issue, but sometimes I ask myself, why? I mean, so many women are being raped, let's say now in the war, now in this moment. It's because rape and violence against women is allowed.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of an ultimate expression of
Yeah.
hate.
Yeah, and it's allowed, it's okay, you know, I mean, anyway, you are a woman, and it's not, it's bad, but that happened many years ago, and it keeps happening now. I think until we don't change this idea of this violence in the society focuses against women, rape gonna be a daily thing for many, many years to come. I don't know. My experience, like working with Latin American women, is really, I couldn't believe, like, if you are sitting, 5 women sitting together, at least 4 of the 5 were being raped in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I asked me, which is the difference between a woman from Argentina or from Peru or from Ecuador or whatever other country to the women in Bosnia, or to the women in the time of the slavery, or the women with the First Nation people. I think that for me it's very important to be connected, and it's the only way then that we can change the society. We can change this idea about women oppression and women and violence, because we do not deserve to be violent.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you know, we were talking about healing.
Yes.
And what can we do? I sense a feeling of desperation. I think rape is not only a women's issue, it's a man's issue as well.
Definitely.
I think men have to begin to talk about how the phenomenon of rape violates their own humanity. And if we were to sort of be a little maudlin about it, we would say that a man should think that when he rapes a woman, he's raping his mother, he's symbolically raping his mother, his sister, and raping the goddess. And they don't see the spiritual dimension, because within at least the Christian theology that I am a part of, or had been a part of, the presence of the goddess and the woman's principle is absent from all that discourse. So it is while a man can see that if he does something, he violates the honor to the father, he doesn't do the same thing as the honor to the mother. It isn't real in a spiritual sense. So in a sense, there is no sanction to his conscience unless he's a very unusual man. And I find it most disturbing that the dialogue is not happening among men, that you're not coming together and talking about what it has done to them and so on, because I feel that as women, yes, we have to connect, and we have to work together to help empower each other, so that if we need to arrest somebody, or if we need to understand what the phenomenon of sexual abuse is, so that we can seek psychological and legal assistance. That's one side. But the other side is that if you are heterosexual, then there is a problem. We still haven't faced how men and women are going to relate in a wholesome way. And that for me is a spiritual sort of backwater for me, you know?
Yes, I am agree with you. I don't know what if you want to add something.
No, I definitely agree. I think that, and also the judicial system in the society that we live in does not support women, and that it does not encourage women to have a voice. And the whole system, I think a lot of women who have experienced rape that I have spoken to finds that the whole system victimizes them again. And they are even more submerged into silence, which nothing will change, I think, until that is one area that I definitely feel has to change.
Yeah, and if I can say something, I was saying that I agree with you what you said, but I will add, as a woman, and I love men. I have men are a very important part of my life. But I like to make clear, like myself, like I said before, we do not deserve to be
That's right.
rape, we do not deserve to be to have violence against us, and it's not our fault
That's
that
right.
we are being
That's right.
raped. That's why when I said, and then we have to change society. I'm agree with you that the men should, because the people who are raping women are men. That they should start thinking about when they rape a woman, they rape their wife, their mother, their daughter. But my feelings and all my energy goes to the women, to us.
Definitely,
Who
yeah.
the only way that we can, one of the ways that we can change and stop that is to raise our self-esteem. You know, when we recognize that we do not deserve to be oppressed, we do not deserve to be raped, we will start changing things. When we can start saying no, because rape is not only Bosnia or Guatemala. Rape is in the marriage. You know,
Right here, right here.
now.
Definitely.
And that's why if I learn how to say no, if my daughter learn how to say no, that she has the right to say no, things going to start changing.
One of the horrifying things, I mean, we have limited energy, and when we're abused, we have even less energy, right? But one of the most horrifying things is to realize that your daughter, in her prime of beauty and everything, can be destroyed by the rape of someone. And worse yet, sometimes the rape of her father. And that is very soul-destroying. And I do agree with you. I mean, the demand on women to protect ourselves. And Mark, we have all been told that we must seek a husband to protect us, right? Protect
And
who?
from what? From whom?
Yes, from whom
exactly.
and for what, right? Usually the men protect their sexual favors and their sexual territory and their privilege to dominate. That's what they protect, not the safety of women and children, most of them. And so it's one's energy is limited, and yes, we have to choose how we spend that energy, and certainly we need it just to realize that this is a basic human right. Nobody has a right to invade the innermost part of our beings. But man, I don't think we're going to win it without these men really realizing, you know.
That's a really interesting part of what we seem to be going round and round, is that part of the fear that I think men and some women have in really addressing this issue head on is that in so doing we would be probably attacking some of our sacred institutions.
And I tell you, some of our sacred institutions need to be attacked, because the most pernicious part of it all for women is to realize that the trust in the authority of the church as divine, as God Almighty who will protect us, and that the priest is a representative of God on earth who's watching over us and protecting us. When the priests turn around and engage either in the act of rape themselves or absolve people of their sins for doing that, I think we have a breakdown, the basis for a breakdown of all an institution as powerful as what the institution of religion can be. And I think that's where we have the real crisis in our society, because the church as a refuge, many women I think have difficulty in seeing the church as a refuge and as a place
Definitely.
of, you know.
And looking at what situations that women who have been systematically raped, who we are reading about in Bosnia, in the former Republic of Yugoslavia, that much of the pain and rootlessness that they find themselves in afterward lies very much in the fact that their religion is unable to accept them into the community again.
Yes. And in fact, because of some of those religious precepts, they're doomed. They'll never make it to heaven, or they'll never be absolved of their guilt, you know, or of their, not their guilt, their shame. And the search for healing, the crisis there again for the women. I mean, they suffer so many times over, not only the physical thing of rape, and the fact that they could be carrying a child. Can you imagine what it means to carry a child for 9 months, the product of fruit of rape? And then you're expected to love that child? I mean, talk about a challenge to unconditional love.
That's why, yes, that's why when something that you said, and for me, the only way, like, to survive as a woman, to be happy, because to enjoy life, is to know that I have power.
Mm-hmm.
If these women in Bosnia or in other parts of the world realize that they can have power, they will rebel. You know what I mean? Why they accept that is because I said it again and again. This is my experience, and this is the tool that I use to empower the women, to give back the women the power to. We want and we need our dreams back. You know, because rape and oppression and violence have taken our
right.
dreams away,
Right.
have taken our creativity away.
Yeah.
So that way, for me, the thing that I use my energy, and I said before, things that makes me like enjoying life, it's knowing that then we can regain that power.
Yes.
And because nobody gonna come and say the women of Bosnia, okay, you should rebel.
No.
They should recognize and realize somehow. They say, okay, we have to stop that, and we are the only one. It's like in Latin American. I mean, the only ones who could or who can like change our terrible governments are ourselves. You know what I mean? We cannot expect anybody to come and change our life. That's why I always emphasize, and maybe I said it thousands of times, we have to recover our power. We have to recover our self-esteem. We have to be. We have to leave this panic, this terror, to walk on the street and say, what's going on here? You know, I like to live in a country, in a city, in a world where I can go out all the time. You know what I mean?
And we have to also support any political activity to get this into the Geneva Convention, rape as a war crime. Because during war, usually many people are rendered powerless because of the sheer force of weaponry and other things of war. And I think when part of the powerlessness is being able to render the women through rape, ultimate destruction. And I think if that becomes part of the Geneva Conventions as one way towards having a serious look at it and bring it into court and have it dealt with as any other war crime.
I would just like to address something that you were speaking of earlier to do with living in this society, and I had a smile on my face when you were talking about looking over your shoulder, because I remember years ago when I was attending college and I was taking a lot of women's studies courses and raising my consciousness to the fact that we live in such a violent society. And my boyfriend and I were sitting around, and I wanted to go to the 7-Eleven, and we live in the Marpole area, and I could not feel safe going out by myself to walk 4 blocks, yet he could. And we had a rather large discussion about it, and I think that we have to recognize the subtlety of the violence. Of course, you know, there's the overt of rape and violence, brutal violence, but also the more subtle forms of walking down a street and having to be harassed by men, of having comments or even physical violation in a minor sort.
Yeah.
To bring the conversation back around to where we started off, thinking of a circle and the way that First Nations people think, what can the average person do to get involved in this issue? What can the average one of us who has a job or is going to school or is raising a family or whatever each one of us is doing, how can we tie into this and make some kind of a difference and see this changed in terms of the Geneva Convention?
Okay, I guess we could go with our politicians, whoever our MPs are, because this is a federal matter. So whoever our MPs are, we can write letters of concern that we want this to be part of the Geneva Convention. And also we can be part of the larger consciousness and engaging in any discussion with each other, as we are, different women's groups, but also with men. The men have to be comrades in arms, if we must use a war metaphor. They have to be comrades in arms to combat this pernicious social evil.
I wanted to just get a brief sense of some kind of personal sharing, if we could, from each one of you, how you came to be involved in this, Milu.
Okay, so I went to a meeting of the women of color women, yeah, and we were talking about different issues, and we talked issue of rape, and I said, okay, how about doing a demonstration? Because it's just terrible what's going on over there. Anyway, and we organized the demonstration. The name of that thing was For Every Woman Raped in Every War, which is something that is very deep inside me. And like I said over there, so for me, rape is very hard to explain rape in English or rape in Spanish. You have to have the gut feeling, like when I was walking on the street and 5 men came on me. So I asked, why me? Why me and why me? And the only thing that I can answer to myself is because I am a woman. Because there was no other reason why I had to be attacked. It was the only reason, because I'm a woman. And
Pamela, could I ask you just briefly if you could let us know what your connection to this issue is?
My connection is mainly with the Aboriginal community as a board member of the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Centre and 2 other committees as well.
Thank you, and Yvonne?
Well, my connection is that a lived history of abuse of black women, rape being one of the main targets, and black women experience that time and time again.
I think we've raised so many issues that I'm sure we would all be able to discuss for many, many more hours. And I hope that this has helped to raise this issue to a level that the average person can talk about. This has been Pressure Point. I'm Valerie Dudoward. Our topic this evening was Women in War. I'd like to thank our guests, Yvonne Brown of the Coalition of Black Women.
Congress of
Black Women. Pamela Dudoward of the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Centre Society, and Milu Gelbort of a fairly new society, the BC Society of Spanish-Speaking Women. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thanks, Valerie.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us.